The sky above Alara burned orange and red. Elder Voss stood at the great window of the council hall and watched his world die. The Hollow had come 3 days ago. 3 days of fire, screaming, and death. His people were not fighters. They had never been fighters. For 10,000 years, the Alari had studied the stars, painted beautiful art, and written songs about peace. They had believed the galaxy was kind. They were wrong. The Hollow swarm moved across the planet like a dark cloud, millions of creatures with sharp claws and empty eyes. They did not negotiate. They did not speak. They only consumed. City after city fell silent. The great libraries burned. The ancient temples collapsed into dust. Elder Voss pressed his thin fingers against the cold glass. His silver skin looked gray now. He had not slept in days. Behind him, his advisors whispered in frightened voices. They all knew the truth. The Ellery could not fight this enemy. Their only hope was the Galactic Council. 300 years ago, the Elari had signed the Mutual Protection Accord. It was a promise. If any member species faced extinction, the others would help. The Council had 12 powerful races. They had great fleets and brave soldiers. Surely they would come. The communication screen flickered to life. Elder Voss turned slowly. The face of High Arbiter Menos appeared. He was a tall creature with blue scales and 4 eyes. His expression showed nothing. No warmth, no concern, just cold calculation. Elder Voss, Menos said. The Council has reached a decision regarding your request for military assistance. Voss felt hope rise in his chest. Thank you, High Arbiter. My people are dying. Every hour we lose thousands. When will the fleet arrive? There was a pause. Menos looked down at something off-screen. When he looked up again, his 4 eyes were empty of emotion. The Council has voted to deny your request. The words hit Voss like a physical blow. He stepped backward. His legs felt weak. What? The Hollow swarm is too large. Menos continued in his flat voice. Our military advisors estimate unacceptable losses if we engage. Additionally, Elara holds no strategic value to Council interests. The resources required for intervention cannot be justified. Cannot be justified? Voss heard his own voice crack. We are dying. My people are being slaughtered in their homes. Children are being taken from their mothers. We signed your accord. We trusted you. The accord allows for exceptions in cases of extreme risk. This qualifies. Menos showed no shame. The Council has also voted to establish a quarantine zone around your system. No ships will be permitted to enter or leave. This is to prevent the Hollow from spreading to other worlds. You are leaving us to die. We are making a difficult but necessary decision. Menos folded his hands. The needs of the many must be considered. I am sorry, Elder Voss. The Council wishes your people peace in whatever time remains. The screen went dark. Elder Voss stood alone in the silent room. His advisors had fled. He could hear distant explosions. The Hollow were getting closer to the capital. Soon they would reach this building. Soon they would reach him. He had lived for 400 years. He had seen the birth of grandchildren and the death of old friends. He had believed in the goodness of the universe. Now, at the end, he understood the truth. The galaxy did not care. Power made decisions. Weakness suffered the consequences. Voss walked slowly to his chair and sat down. He would wait here. He would not run. There was nowhere to run. Far away, in a different part of space, a small ship moved through the darkness between stars. The vessel was called the Horizon's Edge. It was not a warship. It was a patrol vessel, designed for rescue missions and humanitarian aid. The crew was small, just 47 humans. Captain Taewoo stood on the bridge with his arms crossed. He was a man of 50 years, with gray in his black hair and deep lines on his face. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years. He had seen war. He had seen peace. He had seen the best and worst that the galaxy could offer. Right now, he was listening to something that made his blood turn cold. Play it again, he said quietly. Lieutenant Hana touched the console. The recording filled the bridge once more. The voice of High Arbiter Menos explained the Council's decision. The quarantine zone, the denial of aid, the cold logic of abandonment. When it finished, silence hung heavy in the air. 40 million Alari, Dr. Yuna said softly. She was standing near the medical station, her hands gripped tight together. 40 million people, and they just walked away. Sergeant Daysok made a sound of disgust. Strategic value. They calculated the worth of an entire species and decided it wasn't enough. That's how the Council works, Engineer G1 said bitterly. Always has been. We're not even full members. We don't get a vote. We just get to watch. Captain Taewoo said nothing. He stared at the star map on the main screen. Alara was marked with a red circle. The quarantine zone surrounded it like a cage. No one in, no one out. 40 million souls trapped with monsters. Captain, Corporal Nara spoke up. She was young, barely 25, but her eyes were serious. Alara is only 6 hours from our current position. We could reach them before. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Taewoo turned to face his crew. They were looking at him. Waiting. He could see it in their eyes. They already knew what they wanted to do. They were just waiting for him to say it. If we go, he said slowly, we violate the Council quarantine. We become criminals in the eyes of galactic law. We will receive no backup, no support, no rescue if things go wrong. We are one ship against a swarm that numbers in the millions. No one spoke. We will probably die, Taewoo continued. And even if we survive, we may save only a handful of people. This is not a battle we can win. This is a gesture. A statement. Nothing more. Dr. Yuna stepped forward. With respect, Captain, I did not become a doctor to watch people die when I could help them. I didn't become a soldier to follow orders that make me sick, Daysok added. One by one, the crew members nodded. Hana, G1, Nara, all of them. Captain Taewoo felt something warm spread through his chest. Pride. These were his people. This was what humanity meant. He turned to the navigation console. Set course for Alara. Maximum speed. Sir, Hana said, the Council will know we violated the quarantine the moment we cross it. They'll send ships to stop us. Taewoo smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made peace with his choices. Then we better move fast. The horizon's edge changed direction. Its engines glowed bright blue against the endless black. One small ship. 47 humans. Racing toward fire and death and almost certain destruction. On Alara, Elder Voss sat in his chair and waited for the end. He did not know that help was coming. He did not know that somewhere in the cold darkness of space, a species he had never met had heard his cry and answered. The Council had walked away from his people. But humans were different. Humans had always been different. They did not calculate the value of lives. They did not weigh costs and benefits when children were screaming. They simply moved toward the fire. The horizon's edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered the Alara system. For a moment, no one on the bridge spoke. They simply stared at the horror before them. The planet Alara hung in space like a wounded animal. Great fires burned across its surface, visible even from orbit. The beautiful blue oceans had turned gray with ash, and surrounding the planet, blocking out the stars themselves, was the hollow swarm. Captain Taewoo had seen war. He had seen enemy fleets and burning stations and the aftermath of terrible battles. But he had never seen anything like this. There were millions of them. Millions of dark shapes moving through space like a living storm cloud. Their bioships were twisted and wrong, made of bone and flesh and things that should not exist. They pulsed with a sickly red light. Mother of mercy, Lieutenant Hana whispered. I'm reading over 4 million individual hollow signatures, Engineer G1 reported. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Their main concentration is over the northern continent. That's where the capital city is located. Any council ships? Taewoo asked. Negative. The quarantine zone is empty. No one else is here. No one else. 47 humans against 4 million monsters. The math was so terrible it was almost funny. Dr. Yuna moved to stand beside the captain. What do we do? Tae-woo took a deep breath. We do what we came to do. We help. He turned to Corporal Nara. Open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them know we're here. Nara worked the console. Channel open, sir. Tae-woo stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. This is Captain Tae-woo of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We have received reports of your situation. We are here to help. Please respond and tell us where you need us most. Static filled the bridge. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Tae-woo felt doubt creep into his heart. Were they too late? Had everyone already died? Then a voice came through. It was weak and broken, but it was alive. Human vessel. This is Elder Voss of the Ilari. We thought no one was coming. The council said. The council isn't here, Tae-woo interrupted gently. We are. Tell us what you need. There was a sound like crying. Then Elder Voss spoke again. The Hollow have broken through our defenses at the capital. Thousands of my people are trapped in the lower districts. We have wounded. We have children. We have no weapons. Please, please help them. We're on our way. Hold on. Tae-woo turned to his crew. Their faces were pale but determined. Hana, I need a flight path through that swarm. Find me the gaps. Already working on it, sir. Hana's fingers flew across her console. The Hollow don't move like a regular fleet. They're more like insects. They swarm in patterns. If we time it right, we can slip through between their patrol cycles. Do it. Tae-woo looked at Sergeant Dae-suk. Prepare your ground team. Light weapons, medical supplies, and evacuation gear. You're going down to the surface. Dae-suk nodded once. How many can I take? 15. That's all we can spare, and still keep the ship running. Tae-woo put his hand on the sergeant's shoulder. Get those people out. Bring them to the ship. We'll make room. Yes, sir. The next hour was a nightmare of precision and terror. Hana guided the Horizon's Edge through the swarm with movements so careful that everyone held their breath. Twice. Hollow scouts came close enough to touch. Twice, the humans stayed silent and still. Engines powered down, playing dead. The creatures passed by without noticing. Then they broke through to the planet's atmosphere. The capital city of Luneth had once been beautiful. Elder Voss had told them it was a city of white towers and crystal bridges, where music played in the streets, and flowers grew on every corner. Now, it was hell. Buildings burned. Streets were filled with rubble. And everywhere, the Hollow crawled. Sergeant Dae-suk led his team down in 2 small shuttles. They landed in a plaza near the central district. The moment the doors opened, the smell hit them. Smoke, blood, and something else, something alien and wrong. Move fast, Dae-suk ordered. Stay together. Don't engage unless you have to. They moved through the burning streets like ghosts. The Hollow were everywhere, but most were focused on the larger buildings. They were hunting, looking for hiding Ilari. The human team slipped past them in the shadows. Then they found the survivors. In the basement of what had once been a school, over 200 Ilari huddled together. They were small creatures, barely 4 feet tall, with silver skin and large dark eyes. Most were children. They were crying, holding each other, waiting to die. When Dae-suk's team appeared, they screamed. They thought the Hollow had found them. It's okay, Dae-suk said quickly. He held up his hands. We're here to help. We're taking you out of here. An elderly Ilari female looked up at him. Her face was streaked with tears and ash. You are human? We have heard of your kind. But why would you come? We have nothing to offer you. Dae-suk knelt down beside her. His voice was surprisingly gentle. You don't need to offer us anything. That's not how this works. Now please. We need to move. Can everyone walk? They could not all walk. Some were wounded. Some were too young. The human soldiers carried them. They lifted Ilari children onto their backs and wounded elders in their arms. They moved through the burning city like a strange parade, human and alien together. Halfway to the shuttles, they met the Hollow. A patrol of 12 creatures blocked their path. They were tall and thin, with too many joints and mouths full of black teeth. Their eyes glowed red in the firelight. "Get behind me," Daesuk said. He opened fire. His team did the same. Plasma bolts and bullets filled the air. The Hollow screeched and charged. The fighting was brutal. Close. Personal. One soldier, a young woman named Su Min, was pulled into the swarm and did not come back. Another, a man named Young Ho, took a claw across his face and kept fighting. They did not run. They did not retreat. They stood their ground until every Hollow in the patrol was dead. Then they kept moving. Above them, in orbit, the horizon's edge was fighting its own battle. The swarm had noticed the ship. Dozens of Hollow vessels were converging on their position. "Shields at 60%, G1 reported. "Keep us between them and the shuttles," Taewoo ordered. "Nothing gets through." Hana fired the ship's weapons in precise bursts. Each shot destroyed a Hollow craft, but more kept coming. It was like fighting the tide. "Captain, we can't keep this up forever." "We don't need forever, we just need long enough." The shuttles launched from the surface. They carried over 200 Ellery survivors. Daesuk's voice came through the comm, tired but triumphant. "We're coming home, sir, we've got them." "I see you." Taewoo watched the shuttles rise. "Come on. Come on." The Hollow tried to intercept. Hana shot them down. The shuttles reached the ship and docked safely. The moment the doors closed, Taewoo gave the order. "Get us out of here." The horizon's edge turned and ran. Behind them, the Hollow swarm screamed in frustration. They had taken what did not belong to them. They had saved people who were meant to die. In the cargo bay, Dr. Yuna worked frantically on the wounded. Ellery blood was different from human blood. Their bodies were fragile. She learned as she went, making mistakes, fixing them, refusing to let anyone die on her table. Young Kira sat in the corner and watched. She was 12 years old. Her parents were dead. Her home was ash. She did not understand what was happening. She did not understand why these strange creatures had come for her. She had been taught that the galaxy was governed by rules and calculations. Power helped power. The weak were left to suffer. But these humans had gained nothing by coming here. They had lost 2 of their own. They were wounded and exhausted. And they were smiling. They were actually smiling. Sergeant Daesuk sat down beside her. His face was covered in blood. Some of it was his. He looked terrible. But his eyes were kind. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Kira shook her head. "Good." He handed her a small container of water. "Drink this. You're safe now." "Why?" she asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you come for us?" Daesuk looked at her for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "Because you needed help. Isn't that enough?" Kira did not answer. She did not have words for what she was feeling. But something had changed inside her. Something had woken up. For the first time since the Hollow came, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The video spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Someone on the horizon's edge had recorded everything. The ship breaking through the swarm. The soldiers rescuing children from burning buildings. The battle against the Hollow Patrol. Dr. Yuna, working through the night to save wounded Ilari. All of it was uploaded to the open networks where anyone could see it. Within hours, billions of beings across 1,000 worlds were watching humans fight and die for a species they had never met. On the Council Capital world, High Arbiter Manos sat in his private chamber and watched the footage with growing anger. His 4 eyes narrowed as he saw Captain Taewoo's face on the screen. The human looked tired but unbroken. He was speaking to the camera. "We are 47 people against millions. We cannot win this fight alone. The Galactic Council has chosen to walk away. They have their reasons. I am sure they are very logical reasons. But the Ilari are still dying, and we will not leave them. Menos turned off the screen. His advisor stood nearby, waiting nervously. This is unacceptable, Menos said coldly. These humans have violated our quarantine. They have made us look weak and cruel in front of the entire galaxy. What do you wish to do, High Arbiter? Issue a formal statement condemning their actions. Call it reckless. Call it dangerous. Say that they are putting other worlds at risk by engaging the Hollow. Minos stood and walked to his window. Outside, the city gleamed with wealth and power, and increased patrols on the quarantine zone. No more unauthorized vessels get through. Yes, High Arbiter, but even as Menos gave his orders, he knew the damage was already done. People were not listening to the Council anymore. They were listening to the humans. On the Corvan homeworld, a freighter captain named Drell watched the video on his personal device. He was old and tired, with scales that had faded to a dull green. He had spent his whole life following rules and avoiding trouble. He had survived by being careful. But when he saw the human soldiers carrying Ilari children through the fire, something inside him broke. He thought of his own children, his grandchildren. What would he want strangers to do if they were the ones trapped and dying? Would he want the galaxy to calculate their strategic value and walk away? Drell made his decision before he even realized it. He walked to his ship, powered up the engines, and set course for Elara. He did not tell anyone. He did not ask permission. He simply went. He was not alone. On a dozen worlds, others watched the same footage and felt the same thing. A retired military officer from Thessa pulled her old warship out of storage and called her former crew. They were gray and old, but they remembered how to fight. They remembered what honor meant. A group of young doctors on the medical station Mercy Point loaded a transport with supplies and left without authorization. Their supervisor screamed at them over the comm. They turned it off. A wealthy merchant who had spent his life chasing profit looked at his accounts and then looked at the images of dying children. He hired 6 cargo ships, filled them with food and medicine, and sent them toward the quarantine zone. One by one, they came. Not armies, not governments, just people. Individuals who could not watch any longer. Who could not pretend that someone else would solve this problem. Who looked at the humans and felt ashamed of their own silence. On Elara, Captain Tae-Woo did not know any of this. He was too busy trying to keep his people alive. The Horizon's edge had been damaged in the escape from orbit. 3 of their engines were offline, the shields were failing, and the Hollow were adapting. They had learned that this strange ship was their enemy, and they were hunting it. We can't stay in orbit much longer, Lieutenant Hana reported. Every time we try to reach the surface, they cut us off. We've saved maybe 300 Ilari. There are still millions down there. Tae-Woo rubbed his eyes. He had not slept in 2 days. What about the safe zones we identified? The underground shelters? Still holding, but barely. The Hollow are breaking through. Elder Voss says they have maybe 48 hours before the last defenses fall. 48 hours. And then, everyone on Elara would be dead. Sergeant Daesok was in the medical bay. Dr. Yuna had operated on him for 3 hours to repair the damage from his wounds. He was stable now, but weak. He could barely lift his arm, but when he heard the reports, he started getting out of bed. What are you doing? Yuna demanded. You need rest. Your body is still healing. There are children dying on that planet. Daesok's voice was rough with pain. I can rest when they're safe. I can rest when they're safe. You'll kill yourself, maybe. He looked at her with steady eyes. But I won't kill myself sitting here, while others need help. That's not who I am. Yuna wanted to argue. She wanted to sedate him and strap him to the bed. But she understood. She felt the same fire burning in her own chest. So she helped him put on his armor and said nothing. Corporal Nara came to the captain with an idea. Sir, I want to send a message. Not to the council. To everyone. Every station. Every ship. Every planet that will listen. What kind of message? The truth. Nara's young face was serious. I want to tell them what we've seen. What we're fighting for. I want to ask if anyone else will stand with us. Tae-woo thought about it. The council would be furious. It would make them look even worse. It could cause diplomatic problems that lasted for years. But then he thought about the Alari children in his cargo bay. He thought about the fires burning below. He thought about what it meant to be human. Do it, he said. Nara worked for an hour on the message. She recorded video of the survivors. She showed the wounded being treated. She let Elder Voss speak about his people and their history. And then she spoke herself. My name is Nara. I am a corporal in the human fleet. I am 25 years old. In a few days, I will probably be dead. The hollow swarm is too large for us to fight. The Galactic Council has decided that the Alari are not worth saving. But we are still here. We are still fighting. Not because we will win. Not because there is glory or profit in it, but because walking away would make us something we cannot accept being. She paused. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was strong. I do not know who will hear this message. I do not know if anyone is listening. But if you are, I want you to know something. The galaxy is watching what happens here. And the galaxy will remember. In 100 years, beings will look back at this moment and ask one question. When the Alari were dying, what did you do? Did you calculate and turn away? Or did you stand up? She reached toward the camera. We cannot force you to come. We cannot shame you into caring. But if there is something inside you that says this is wrong, that innocent people should not die alone and abandoned, then please come. We need you. The message ended. Nara sent it to every frequency she could reach. Then she sat back and waited. For 12 hours, nothing happened. The Hollow continued their assault. The humans continued their desperate defense. Hope faded with every passing minute. And then, at the edge of the quarantine zone, a ship appeared. Hana saw it first on her sensors. Captain, unknown vessel incoming. They're broadcasting an identification signal. It's a Korvan freighter. Tae-woo moved to the screen. Open a channel. A face appeared. Old. Green scales faded with age. Eyes that had seen too much compromise. This is Captain Drell of the freighter Dawn's Light. I heard your message. I am not a soldier. I do not have weapons. But I have cargo space. I can carry people. Tell me where to go. Before Tae-woo could respond, another signal appeared. Then another. Then 5 more. This is the Thessan vessel Iron Honor. We are old. But we still remember how to fight. This is the medical transport Mercy flight. We have supplies and doctors. This is the cargo fleet of the Azan Trading Company. We are at your disposal. One by one, they came. Small ships and large, military and civilian, old and young, from a dozen different species and 100 different worlds. They came because they had seen the message. They came because they could not look away any longer. They came because somewhere inside them, there was still something that recognized right from wrong. Captain Tae-woo stood on his bridge and watched the ragtag fleet assemble. These were not warriors. They were merchants and doctors and retired soldiers and idealistic young people. They had no coordination, no plan, no real hope of winning, but they had come. Against their governments, against the council, against logic and self-interest and fear. They had come. Tae-woo smiled. For the first time in days, he actually smiled. Lieutenant Hana, he said, I think we have ourselves a fleet. Hana looked at the screen. Tears were rolling down her face, but she was smiling too. Yes, sir. I believe we do. On the surface of Ilara, Elder Voss received word of the arriving ships. He walked to the window of his shelter and looked up at the sky. Through the smoke and fire, he could see lights moving. New lights, human lights, and others. They came, he whispered. They actually came. Beside him, young Kira watched too. She did not understand everything that was happening, But she understood one thing. The humans had asked for help, and the galaxy had answered. Not the powerful, not the governments. Just ordinary people who refused to accept that this was how things had to be. Something was changing. Something was waking up. And for the first time, Kira believed they might survive. The volunteer fleet gathered in a loose formation above Alara. 37 ships of every size and shape. Freighters with no weapons. Old warships with aging crews. Medical transports filled with doctors instead of soldiers. It was the strangest battle group ever assembled. Captain Taewoo looked at the tactical display and felt the weight of command press down on him. These people had come because of his crew's message. They had risked everything to be here. Now they were looking to him for a plan. He did not have one. Not really. Not against millions of hollow creatures and a swarm that covered the planet like a plague. "All right," he said to the assembled captains over the communication channel. "Let's figure out how to win this." Lieutenant Hana had been studying the hollow for days. She spoke first. "The swarm operates like a hive mind. They're all connected to something, a central intelligence. Take that out, and the whole thing falls apart." "How do we find this central intelligence?" asked Captain Drell. "I've been tracking their movement patterns. There's something in high orbit on the dark side of the planet, a structure, much larger than the others. Every signal in the swarm eventually connects back to it." Hana put the image on screen. It was massive. A twisted mountain of bone and flesh floating in space. "That's their queen. Kill her. Kill them all. That thing is surrounded by their heaviest defenses," said the commander of the Iron Honor. "We'd never get close." "No. Not in a direct assault." Taewoo studied the image. "But what if we don't go directly? What if we give them something else to worry about first?" Engineer G1 stepped forward. He had been working non-stop since the battle began, keeping the ship running with desperate repairs. But his mind had been working on other problems too. "I've been studying the Alari crystal technology," he said. "They use it for communication and energy transfer. It operates on unique frequencies. I think I can modify it to disrupt the Hollow's signals. Create interference, confusion. Make them lose coordination. How long would the effect last? Minutes, maybe less. But it might be enough to create an opening." Dr. Yuna had her own contribution. She had been treating hollow wounds and studying captured samples. "The creatures avoid certain mineral compounds found in LRE caves. It seems to damage their sensory organs. I've been working on a gas delivery system. If we can spread it across a wide area, it would force them back." Ideas began flowing. The merchant captain offered to use his cargo ships as decoys, drawing hollow attention while the combat vessels moved into position. The medical transports volunteered to handle evacuation, running constant trips between the surface and the fleet. The retired Thessan officers shared tactical knowledge from old battles, strategies for fighting enemies with superior numbers. Slowly, a plan took shape. It was desperate. It was complicated. 100 things could go wrong, but it was all they had. "One more thing," Taewoo said. "The Queen's defenses are too strong for our ships to break through. Even with the disruption, someone needs to get close. Plant explosives directly on the structure." "That's a suicide mission," someone said. "Yes." Taewoo's voice was calm. "It probably is. The Horizon's Edge will do it. We started this. We'll finish it." Taewoo's voice. Taewoo's voice. Taewoo's voice was calm. "We'll finish it." There was silence on the channel. Then Sergeant Dae-Sok spoke. He was standing in the corner of the bridge, pale and weak but present. "No, sir. With respect, you need to coordinate the fleet. I'll take a strike team to the surface. We'll find another way." "Sergeant, you can barely stand." "I can stand well enough to fight." Dae-Sok's jaw was set. "There's a hive node on the northern continent. It's connected directly to the Queen. We destroy it. We weaken her defenses. Then your ship has a chance." Taewoo wanted to argue, but he looked at his sergeant's eyes and saw the truth there. Dae-Sok knew he might not survive this. He had made peace with it. "All right, Taewoo said quietly. Pick your team, and come back alive. That's an order. Yes, sir. The battle began at dawn on Alara. The cargo ships moved first, flying in obvious patterns to attract hollow attention. The swarm responded exactly as predicted, sending waves of bioships to intercept. But the freighters were fast and nimble, leading the creatures on a chase that pulled them away from the main concentration. Then, G1 activated the crystal disruptor. The effect was immediate and strange. The hollow stopped moving in perfect coordination. Some crashed into each other. Others flew in circles. The hive mind had been scrambled. The connection was broken. Now, Taewoo commanded. All combat vessels, attack. The Iron Honor and the other warships opened fire. Their weapons were old but powerful. Hollow ships exploded in waves of green flame. The volunteer fleet carved a path through the chaos. On the surface, Sergeant Daesok led his team through the burning forests of the northern continent. The Alari called this place the Singing Woods, because the crystal trees made music when the wind blew. Now the only sound was fire and screaming. Elder Voss was with them. He had insisted on coming. These were his people. His world. He would not hide while others fought for it. The hive node is in the valley ahead, Voss said. My people used to perform ceremonies there. Before, he could not finish. Daesok put a hand on his shoulder. Show us the way. They moved through the trees like shadows. Dr. Yuna's gas canisters had been dropped ahead of them by drones. The hollow creatures in the area were disoriented, stumbling and blind. The humans shot them down without mercy. Then they reached the valley. The hive node was horrible. A tower of living flesh, rising from the ground, pulsing with sick light. Thousands of hollows surrounded it, and even through the gas and the disruption, they knew enemies were near. We need to get the explosives to the base, Daesok said. Cover me. I'll come with you, said a voice. Everyone turned. It was Kira. She had followed them from the shelter, hiding in the shadows. She was small and thin, and had never held a weapon in her life. No, Daesok said immediately. Go back. I know these tunnels. Kira's eyes were fierce. There's an old path beneath the valley. My grandfather showed me. It leads directly under the tower. You'll never reach the base from above. There are too many of them. Daesok looked at Elder Voss. The old Alari nodded slowly. She speaks the truth. The passage exists. I had forgotten. For a long moment, Daesok stared at the young girl. She was terrified. He could see it in her trembling hands. But she was still here. Still willing to help. All right, he said. Lead the way. They entered the tunnels. The passage was narrow and dark, carved from crystal that glowed faintly with its own light. Kira moved quickly, her small body fitting easily through spaces the humans had to squeeze through. Behind them, the battle raged on. They could feel the explosions through the ground. Finally, they reached the center. They were directly beneath the hive node. The walls around them were warm and pulsing, like being inside a living creature. Daesok planted the explosives. His hands were steady, even though his body was failing. Blood was seeping through his bandages. He did not have much time left. Get out, he told the others. I'll set the timer. Sergeant, you need to come with us. The timer is damaged. Someone has to trigger it manually. Daesok smiled. It was a tired, peaceful smile. It's okay. This is a good way to go. Better than some. Kira grabbed his arm. No. You saved my people. You cannot die here. I'm not dying, kid. I'm buying time. He gently removed her hand. Now go. Remember what we did here. Remember what it means to fight for others. Elder Voss pulled Kira away. They ran back through the tunnels. Behind them, Sergeant Daesok waited until they were clear. Then he pressed the trigger. The explosion shook the entire continent. The hive node collapsed in a pillar of fire that reached toward the sky. And in orbit, the Queen felt it. She screamed, a sound that echoed through space itself. Her defenses weakened. Her connection to the swarm flickered. Now, Captain Taewoo said, full speed toward the Queen. The horizon's edge shot forward. Hollow ships tried to intercept, but they were confused and uncoordinated. The volunteer fleet gave everything they had, creating a corridor of fire through which the human ship flew. They were going to ram the Queen. They were going to end this with their own death. But at the last moment, 3 ships appeared. Thesson military cruisers, sleek and powerful. Official government vessels. "This is Admiral Wren of the Thesson Second Fleet," a voice said over the comm. "My daughter is down there in one of your volunteer ships. I'm done following orders that shame my family. Let's kill this monster together." The 4 ships fired in unison. Their combined weapons tore through the Queen's defenses. The massive creature tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The horizon's edge fired its final torpedoes directly into the Queen's core. The explosion was blinding. The Queen died in fire and silence, and across the planet, the hollow swarm collapsed. Without their central mind, they were nothing, just animals. Confused, lost, and dying. The battle was over. In the ruins of the northern valley, Kira climbed out of the tunnels. She was covered in dust and ash. Elder Voss held her hand as they looked at the crater where the hive node had stood. Sergeant Daysuck was gone. His body would never be found. Kira did not cry. She had no tears left. But she made a promise. She would remember him. She would remember all of them. And she would spend her life being worthy of their sacrifice. Above them, the sky was finally clear. For the first time in weeks, Kira could see the stars. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Alara. The planet was still wounded. Great scars marked the land where the Hollow had burned their path. Cities lay in ruins. Millions had died. The Alari would spend generations rebuilding what was lost, but they were alive. Against all odds, against the cold calculations of the powerful, they had survived. And they were not alone anymore. Ships came from across the galaxy. Not government vessels, but private citizens. Volunteers who wanted to help rebuild. Engineers and doctors, and farmers and teachers. They came because they had watched the battle and felt something change inside them. They came because the humans had shown them what was possible. Kira stood at the edge of the memorial plaza and watched the final preparations. She was 13 now, taller than before, with a new steadiness in her eyes. Dr. Yuna had taken her as an apprentice. She was learning medicine, learning how to heal instead of hide. Today was the day of dedication. The memorial was finally complete. It was a simple structure. A wall of white stone rising from the heart of the capital. On its surface, names were carved. Every human who had died defending Alara. Every volunteer from the fleet who had given their life. Every Alari who had fought alongside them. Sergeant Daysoak's name was near the top. Elder Voss walked slowly across the plaza. He moved with difficulty now. The war had aged him badly. But his eyes were still bright as he approached the memorial. "It is beautiful," he said softly. "It should be," Kira replied. "They deserve beauty." At the bottom of the memorial, in both Ellery script and human English, a single inscription had been carved. Voss had written it himself. He read the words for the 1,000th time, and still, they made his throat tight. "They did not know us. They owed us nothing. They came anyway." Across the plaza, a shuttle was landing. The crowd stirred. Captain Tae-woo emerged from the ship, followed by his surviving crew. Lieutenant Hana, Dr. Yuna, Engineer G1, Corporal Nara. They were dressed in formal uniforms, clean and pressed. They looked strange without the dirt and blood of battle on their faces. They had been summoned to the Galactic Council. High Arbiter Menos had called a special session. The official agenda was to address the unauthorized human intervention in the Alara crisis. Everyone knew what that really meant. Menos wanted to punish them. He wanted to make an example of the humans who had embarrassed his council. Tae-woo was not afraid. He had faced the hollow swarm. A room full of politicians held no terror for him now. The council chamber was vast and old. Representatives from 100 species sat in their assigned seats, watching as the human delegation entered. At the center, High Arbiter Menos stood behind his podium. His 4 eyes were cold with controlled anger. Captain Taewoo of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge, Menos began. You and your crew are brought before this council to answer for your violations of galactic law. You breached a sanctioned quarantine zone. You engaged in unauthorized military operations. You encouraged civilian populations to defy their governments. These actions have destabilized the order that keeps our galaxy at peace. Unquote. Taewoo stood calmly. He did not speak. He waited. The council therefore moves to censure the human species and impose restrictions on your fleet movements until I wish to speak. The interruption came from the Alari delegation. Elder Voss had risen from his seat. His voice was thin but carried across the chamber. Menos frowned. Elder Voss, this matter does not directly concern your species. With respect, High Arbiter, this matter concerns us more than anyone. Voss walked slowly to the center of the chamber. Every eye followed him. 1 year ago, my people sent a message to this council. We begged for help. We cited the accords that we had trusted for 300 years. And this council voted to let us die. Silence in the chamber. The humans did not calculate our strategic value. They did not debate acceptable losses. They saw suffering, and they acted. 47 people in one small ship. Against millions of enemies, they knew they would probably die. They came anyway. Voss paused, gathering his strength. The beings you seek to punish are the reason my species still exists. They are the reason my granddaughter is still alive. They are the reason there is still an Alara to represent in this chamber. He turned to face the assembly directly. The Alari formally request that humanity be granted full council membership. We sponsor this motion, and we will oppose any attempt to punish those who saved us with everything we have. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Other representatives began to stand. The Thessan admiral, who had defied his government to join the final battle, the Corvan Trade Guild, whose ships had served as evacuation transports, the medical corps from a dozen worlds who had traveled to Alara to help with reconstruction. One by one, they spoke in support of humanity. They shared their own stories of what they had witnessed. They asked the council the question that had been burning in the galaxy for a year. If not for the humans, what would we be? What kind of civilization abandons its members to die? 1. High Arbiter Menos looked around the chamber. He saw which way the wind was blowing. The vote he had planned was collapsing. The censure would fail. Humanity would not be punished. They would be celebrated. He had been outmaneuvered by ghosts. By the memory of what the humans had done, the motion for censure is withdrawn, Menos said stiffly. The council will take the membership request under advisement. It was not a victory, but it was enough. Outside the council chamber, Captain Taewoo was surrounded by beings he had never met. Young officers from species across the galaxy, pressing forward to speak with him. How do we become more like you? A Thessan cadet asked. How do we learn to act instead of calculate? And Taewoo looked at her. He thought of Sergeant Dae Suk. He thought of the soldiers who had died in the streets of Luneth. He thought of all the choices that had led to this moment. You don't become like us, he said gently. You become the best version of yourselves. When you see something wrong, you act. When someone needs help, you give it. You don't wait for permission. You don't ask if it's convenient. You just do what's right and accept the consequences. He put his hand on her shoulder. That's not a human thing. That's a choice any being can make. Today. Right now. Every day for the rest of your life. On Alara, the dedication ceremony was ending. Kira stood before the memorial wall, her hand pressed against the cold stone. She traced the letters of Dae Suk's name with her fingers. I don't know if you can hear me, she whispered. But I wanted to tell you something. I started training today. Dr. Yuna says I have talent. She says I could be a great healer someday. She paused. Her throat was tight. I'm going to spend my life helping people. Not because I owe you. Because you showed me what it means to be brave. You showed me that one person can make a difference. Even against impossible odds. Even if no one is watching. Even if no one ever knows. She stepped back from the wall. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It looked like fire, but a gentle fire. A fire that gave warmth instead of destruction. I won't forget you. None of us will. Far above, in orbit, the horizon's edge was being repaired. The ship had been badly damaged in the battle. For months, it had sat in a Thessan shipyard, while engineers worked to make it whole again. Now it was ready. Captain Taewoo walked through the familiar corridors. His crew was smaller now. Some had not survived the battle. Others had chosen to stay on Alara and help with reconstruction. But enough remained. Enough to fly again. Corporal Nara met him on the bridge. She was different now. The young woman who had recorded that desperate message 1 year ago had grown into something harder and softer at the same time. Message from command, she said. They've got reports of a refugee crisis in the outer systems, some species we've never heard of. Their world is dying and no one is helping. Taewoo settled into his captain's chair. He looked at the star map. Somewhere out there, more people were suffering. More children were crying in the dark, waiting for help that might never come. Set course, he said. Maximum speed. Yes, sir. The horizon's edge turned toward the darkness between stars. Its engines glowed bright blue against the endless black. One ship, one crew, racing toward another fire, because that was what they did. That was what humans had always done. Not because they were stronger or smarter than anyone else. Not because they expected rewards or recognition, but because they could not live with themselves if they walked away. The Council had abandoned the Alari. The galaxy had calculated and turned aside. But humans were different. They would always be different. They did not measure the worth of lives. They did not weigh the cost of compassion. When the fire burned, they moved toward it. And in doing so, they reminded the galaxy what civilization was supposed to mean. The stars wheeled overhead. The ship disappeared into the void. And somewhere, on Alara, Kira looked up at the sky and smiled. She knew they would come back. They always would. Because wherever there was darkness, wherever there was suffering, wherever people cried out for help, the humans would answer. That was their nature. That was their gift. That was what made them human.